Have you ever had the experience in a narcissistic relationship of looking back and sadly sort of cringing at yourself, at things you did or things you said, or even the things you might have hoped for? You may look back and cringe at justifications you made for their behavior in the relationship. You may look back and feel sick that you let them back into your life. You may look back and cringe at your own betrayal blindness, at not seeing things that were clearly happening, but you also know that you did see them, but also weren't really seeing them. And at the time, you didn't do anything about it, but now you see it clearly. You may look back and recall how hard you worked to make it work, all the ways you overextended yourself or walked on eggshells, or the sacrifices you made, or the people you gave up. You may look back and feel sick that you got into big arguments with them where you kept trying to explain yourself. You may look back and look at times that you may have tried to win them over, praise them, compliment them, fluff them up. You may look back and remember how you missed things that were important to other people in your life. A friend's birthday party, a cousin's wedding, a night that a friend just wanted to talk to you, but because you were too busy dealing with the narcissistic relationship, or didn't want to anger the narcissistic person, or just you weren't up to the fight with the narcissistic person to find the time or go to the event. You may look back and recall how you listened to their justifications and believed their future faking and believed them when they said they would change. And as you look back, you may shake your head or even shudder. And this is something I call the shame look back. And it's important to understand this phenomenon because it can slow down your healing, which is never a good thing. There is that moment when you finally understand the entire narcissism thing, the radical acceptance, and it's not going to change, and how the dynamics work, and that it isn't just about charm and charisma and confidence, but it's also about dehumanization and neglect and manipulation, and that just because some things may be nice from time to time, that it's not enough if someone keeps making you smaller and smaller every day. And there is that moment, and it's a big moment, when you do recognize in this relationship that it's not you. And while the self-blame may take a minute to clear out, that you do start seeing that the behaviors, the patterns that are in the narcissistic person, and all the hypervigilance and eggshell walking and attempts to mind read will never work. But healing is not as simple as looking forward and individuating and integrating and getting it. We also look back, sometimes to extract the lessons from what happened, to figure out what we think we missed, to see it through clearer eyes. And when we look back with the new glasses of understanding narcissism and these dynamics, we look back at a version of ourselves that can feel almost unrecognizable. When you look back, you may see warning signs that are so clear to you now. You didn't even know future faking was a thing once upon a time, but now you do. You may see the gaslighting for what it was, but didn't get it then. You may also recognize that the betrayal blindness was real, and that the not seeing the betrayals meant that the status quo, the relationship, and all that went with it could be maintained. Your attachments could sustain and life could go on. Once we see it clearly, we wonder, how the hell did we miss it? And worse, we may look back and say, ew, how did I do that? When we look back, we sometimes feel we betrayed ourselves. But you didn't. This is where, just like with inner child work, I believe there has to be inner me before I understood narcissism work. Because it may be very much an adult you that may have been healing from childhood wounds, or who didn't understand that narcissism was a thing, or didn't have a complete understanding of it. That you, the you before understanding narcissism, needs to be cared for and protected and guided, just like an inner child would. We don't want to lash out at an inner child. And ideally, we do not lash out at this us from back then who didn't get it. The shame look back can slow down healing because, as I said, not only can it leave us feeling like we betrayed ourselves, but we may carry this sense of shame for being weak or dumb or complicit or foolish. Again, you didn't know and nobody teaches you this. And then throw on top of that there may have been enablers and dismissers and other casts of characters who either were narcissistic themselves or also didn't see it or didn't want to see it. I mean, honestly, none of us really have a chance at this. We're going to get pulled into these relationships because we're not being taught. Listen, none of us look back at ourselves and shame ourselves for once not being able to walk or ride a bike or read. We had to learn those things. And frankly, this navigating narcissistic relationship stuff is similar. And we only in the last 15, 20 years have even started having this conversation in public forums, and really not in earnest until the last 5 years. Nobody taught you this. In many ways, the way most of us did our narcissistic relationships in the past, giving second chances, giving the benefit of the doubt, forgiving, wondering what our part was, trying all kinds of ways to communicate. That's what the books still tell people to do. Listen, even in 2025, lots of folks go into couples therapy and aren't told about narcissism, even when it is clear as day that they are in a narcissistic relationship. What you did in this relationship in the past was, let's call it conventional, and it was what you were taught to do. Learning about narcissism and integrating it into how you approach a relationship, that's actually a massive evolution and shift. But the shame look back, like I said, can be something that makes us visibly cringe at ourselves, fosters a sense of judgment in ourselves, a shame within ourselves, a sense, again, that we betrayed ourselves. And shame is not good for us. For a long time, you have had to carry the projected shame of the narcissistic person, having to continue to carry a shame on top of that for not knowing something you weren't taught. It's slowing down your process of healing and growth. But it's common. And it's too simple for me to say, don't do it. But there are things you can do, like practicing self-compassion, paying attention to how you carry the shame in your body physically. You can't just turn it off. And if you try to just ignore your past, it will come back and bite you. Most of the shame look back and those behaviors we did in the past were our well-intentioned but doomed attempts to connect to someone unhealthy or harmful. They were attachment behaviors and attempts to protect ourselves, which ended up harming ourselves, which is what protective pieces of ourselves can do. But open yourself up to the possibility that all along you were simply being human. You were trying to attach and connect. You were having empathy, but sadly you were trying to do all of this in a one-way relationship. Instead of cringing at your past self in a narcissistic relationship, show your past self a shred of the compassion and benefit of the doubt and empathy that you showed the narcissistic person. Healing is about laying down the shame these relationships have us carrying, putting it down an ounce at a time. The shame of our past behavior that was simply an attempt to connect or stay safe. The shame that was projected on us. The shame we were taught to have about our true selves. The shame we had because we believed that we betrayed ourselves. The shame of believing it was our fault. It never was. Being in a relationship where you are being harmed and trying harder and harder doesn't make you foolish. It makes you human. And courage is the willingness to learn about uncomfortable dynamics, such as narcissistic relationships, even though it means that the hope and all the illusions we had will be toppled. I hope someday you can look back at you in the relationship, not with shame, but with awe and wonder at all you were able to endure, still retain your empathy, and still manage to navigate forward despite all of it. And there ain't no shame in that, because that is courage. Thanks again.